What if the divine guide your heart seeks is also the one awaited by billions, just wearing a different cultural name? Could our deepest spiritual divisions be a misunderstanding? This isn't just about comparing religions. We're uncovering the Christ principle, a universal blueprint for hope and unity, to show you how one world teacher's message echoes through all faiths, offering profound clarity. From ancient sages to modern seekers, a single powerful idea persists. A pivotal guide appears when humanity needs it most. This isn't folklore, it's a pattern in human consciousness. Ever felt a spiritual truth so big it just had to be larger than one single tradition? We all share it, don't we? That deep, often quiet, yearning for direction, for a sense of meaning that anchors us, especially when the seas of life feel stormy, or when we stand at the precipice of great personal change. It's a fundamental human impulse, this quest to understand our place in the grand scheme of things. Yet there's a profound paradox here. This very search for a spiritual safe harbor, for a guiding light, has often, throughout history, led to the building of walls. Walls between faiths, walls between cultures, walls between people. We carve out our sacred spaces, define our saviors, and sometimes, in the process, we inadvertently create separation where the original intention, perhaps, was one of connection to a greater whole. It's one of the core challenges, one of the deep sorrows of our shared human story, this fragmentation in the face of a universal longing. Consider this. Across vast stretches of time, in civilizations geographically isolated, long before the internet or even written records could easily bridge continents, strikingly similar narratives emerged. Stories of a great teacher, a divine messenger, an avatar, prophesied to appear at a critical juncture in human affairs. From the Indus Valley to the ancient Americas, from the heart of Africa to the Mediterranean basin, this expectation of a guiding presence took root, a testament, perhaps, to an ancient wisdom embedded within our collective psyche. This raises a profound question, one that sits at the very heart of our exploration today. Are these diverse prophecies, these myriad names and faces of awaited guides, merely disconnected cultural echoes, reverberations in isolated chambers? Or do they, in fact, point to something far more coherent, a singular underlying spiritual reality, a common wellspring of inspiration from which all these streams of hope and expectation flow? Think about the golden rule, that simple yet profoundly transformative injunction: treat others as you would like to be treated. It appears, with only slight variations in wording, in nearly every major religion and ethical philosophy known to humankind. From Confucius in ancient China to the teachings of Jesus in the Levant, from the core tenets of Hinduism and Buddhism to the ethical framework of Islam and the humanistic philosophies that followed, it's a stunning convergence. Now, what if this remarkable unity and ethical understanding is merely the most visible outcropping, the tip of a vast submerged continent of shared spiritual truth? What if the expectation of a world teacher is another such outcropping, a signpost pointing towards that same unified spiritual heritage? So, how do we begin to reconcile these diverse expectations with the idea of a single unifying truth? One way is to understand the concept of the world teacher not as a singular fixed personality endlessly reincarnating, but rather as a cosmic function, a spiritual office, if you will. Imagine for a moment a head coach position for Team Humanity in the grand unfolding game of evolution. The position itself, the role of world teacher, remains constant, a beacon of guidance. But different highly evolved souls, these spiritual coaches, step into that role at crucial seasons in human history. Each brings the right playbook, the divine wisdom perfectly attuned to that era's specific challenges, its unique opportunities for growth, and the particular psychological and spiritual needs of the people at that time. In certain esoteric traditions, particularly those stemming from theosophy which gained prominence in the West, one name often associated with the current or next holder of this sacred office is Maitreya. This figure is seen as the one who embodies this world teacher function for the age we are now entering. He is not so much a new founder of a religion, but a synthesizer, an illuminator of the perennial truths that underpin all genuine spiritual paths. This perspective invites us to look beyond the personality to the principle, beyond the individual to the universal office they represent. It connects directly to the realm of metaphysics, the study of those underlying realities that shape our existence, and points towards a grander purpose for the evolution of human consciousness, an evolution not random, but gently and wisely guided by intelligences and a love far vaster than our everyday comprehension often allows. And here we touch upon a subtle, yet vital point. If divine intelligence, the very source of all being, is like the vast open internet of cosmic knowledge, an infinite reservoir of wisdom and love, then the world teacher acts somewhat like a supremely skilled and benevolent search engine. This engine doesn't invent the knowledge, but rather curates, focuses, and delivers the most relevant, life-altering search results, those essential truths that humanity as a whole desperately needs at that precise moment in its journey. The crucial question for us then becomes, are we open to receiving these profound downloads of wisdom and inspiration, regardless of the cultural user interface through which they are presented? Are we willing to look past the form to perceive the timeless essence? Let's ground this idea by looking at figures who are widely revered as having fulfilled this role of world teacher, leaving an indelible mark on human consciousness. Consider Krishna, a central figure in Hinduism. The Bhagavad Gita, that timeless dialogue set on a battlefield, encapsulates so much of his core teaching. It's not just a story of war. It's a profound exploration of duty, action, and the nature of reality. When Arjuna, the warrior prince, is paralyzed by despair at the thought of fighting his own kin, Krishna doesn't offer simple platitudes. Instead, he illuminates the path of karma yoga, wise, selfless action performed without attachment to the outcome, and bhakti yoga, the path of unwavering devotion and love for the divine. These teachings aren't just ancient philosophy. They are practical roadmaps for navigating the complexities of life with a clear mind and an open heart, fostering a mindset of purpose and connection to a larger divine will. Then, turn to Gautama Buddha. His life and teachings offer another powerful lens through which to see the world teacher principle in action. Shaken by the reality of human suffering, he embarked on a profound quest for its cessation. The fruit of that quest, the Noble Eightfold Path, is a deeply practical guide to self-development and spiritual awakening. It emphasizes right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These aren't abstract ideals, but a step-by-step process for cultivating wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline, the very tools needed to achieve inner peace and liberation from suffering. His emphasis on mindfulness and meditation has, of course, found profound resonance even in our modern, often hectic world. What's truly fascinating here, and offers us a clue to the underlying unity we are exploring, is how concepts central to their teachings echo each other, despite different cultural contexts. The profound compassion, or karuna, that is a cornerstone of Buddhist ethics, finds a powerful parallel in the emphasis on selfless service, seva, and desireless action, nishkama karma, within Hinduism, as taught by Krishna. Both point to a fundamental movement of the human spirit away from self-centeredness towards a more expansive, benevolent engagement with the world. It's this outward flow of love and wisdom that is a hallmark of the Christ principle, regardless of the name it wears. These towering figures, Krishna and Buddha, offered roadmaps to inner freedom and divine connection, meticulously tailored for the people and the spirit of their times. If their core messages of wisdom, compassion, and the possibility of liberation resonate so powerfully across millennia, across vast cultural divides, What does that reveal about the fundamental spiritual DNA they undoubtedly share? And how did this same spiritual signature, this same impulse towards enlightenment and unity, appear in other major traditions that shaped our world? Now, let's turn our attention to a term that is often and understandably closely associated with one particular religious tradition, yet in its deepest, most esoteric sense, carries a meaning that is truly universal: the Christ principle, or Christ consciousness. To grasp this broader understanding, it helps to see Christ, much like Buddha, not primarily as a personal name, but as a title, a state of spiritual attainment, a level of consciousness. It refers to a full awakening to our divine nature and our inherent oneness with the source of all being, what some might call God, or the universe, or Brahman. In this light, Jesus of Nazareth is revered by many as a being who perfectly embodied and expressed this universal Christ principle, who lived it so fully that his life became a luminous demonstration of its power and its love for the Western world. This Christ principle, then, is not the exclusive property of any single religion or individual. It is rather a universal current of divine love, redemptive wisdom, and unifying consciousness that flows through all of creation. It is the very energy that animates the office of the world teacher, the spiritual lifeblood, if you will, that empowers their mission. It is often described as the Logos, the divine word or reason that underpins the cosmos. And here's where it becomes deeply personal and incredibly relevant to each of us on our own path of spiritual growth. This same Christ principle, this spark of divine consciousness, is not something entirely external to us. It is, as the Gospel of John beautifully states, the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. It is an inherent potential within every human heart, a seed of divinity awaiting recognition, nurturing, and its full blossoming. It is that part of us that yearns for wholeness, for connection, for a love that transcends all boundaries, for a peace that passes all understanding. It can, of course, be challenging to disentangle the term Christ from its deeply ingrained cultural and religious associations, particularly for those outside the Christian tradition, or even for many within it who have not encountered this more mystical, universal interpretation. But if we can gently set aside, just for a moment, any preconceived notions or doctrinal limitations and approach it as a term for a universal spiritual reality, a profound insight begins to dawn. It invites us into a more inclusive, more expansive understanding of spiritual truth. Think of those moments in your own life, perhaps during quiet meditation, or in an act of selfless service, or even amidst the beauty of nature. Have you ever felt a wave of love so profound, a sense of connection so vast, or a moment of clarity so illuminating that it seemed to come from a place beyond your everyday, limited self? Could these experiences, these glimpses of something more, be your own direct encounters with this universal Christ consciousness, that divine current, gently bubbling to the surface of your awareness, reminding you of who you truly are? This universal expectation of a world teacher, this divine emissary, isn't confined to Eastern traditions or the esoteric understanding of the Christ principle. If we look to the Abrahamic faiths, we find powerful, resonant parallels. Within Judaism, there is the long-held anticipation of the Messiah, a divinely appointed leader who will usher in an era of peace, justice, and redemption for his people, and, ultimately, for the world. This figure is not merely a political leader, but a spiritual one, who will restore harmony between humanity and God. Christianity, of course, sees Jesus as the Messiah who has already come, but also maintains an expectation of his second coming, a return that will bring about the final consummation of God's kingdom, an end to suffering, and the establishment of a new heaven and a new earth. Again, the themes are of profound global transformation spearheaded by a divine figure. And in Islam, there is the deeply held belief in the coming of the Imam Mahdi, the guided one, who is expected to appear before the end of time to rid the world of evil, injustice, and tyranny. He will, it is taught, fill the earth with equity and justice as it had been filled with oppression and tyranny, and will rule justly, establishing true Islamic principles. Now, if we step back from the specific theological interpretations unique to each tradition and look at the core archetypal themes, as scholars like Joseph Campbell did with his Hero with 1,000 Faces, or as proponents of the perennial philosophy have long suggested, we see a striking pattern emerge. The awaited figures, be they called Messiah, Mahdi, Maitreya, or by another name, almost invariably share common characteristics in their prophesied missions. They are expected to appear in a time of significant global crisis or moral decay. Their arrival signals a period of judgment or purification, followed by the restoration of divine law, truth, and harmony. They bring wisdom, vanquish darkness, and unite humanity under a banner of peace and spiritual understanding. Imagine different cultural narratives as unique screenplays, each telling the story of a hero's journey, not just for an individual, but for humanity itself, with a pivotal divine mentor guiding that journey. The costumes, the settings, the specific plot points, and the language of the screenplay naturally vary to resonate with the intended audience, the cultural context in which the story unfolds. But the core archetype of the awaited guide who ushers in an era of profound transformation, of a return to divine principles, is remarkably, powerfully consistent. It's as if humanity is collectively dreaming the same fundamental dream of hope and redemption, expressing it in a multitude of tongues, through a rich diversity of symbols. This diversity doesn't necessarily invalidate the core aspiration. Rather, it enriches our understanding of its depth and universality. So, what happens when we bring all these threads together? When we place Krishna alongside Buddha, when we see the Christ principle as a universal current embodied by Jesus and awaited as Maitreya, when we hear the echoes of the Messiah and the Imam Mahdi, do we see a battlefield of competing truths, or something far more beautiful, far more coherent? The perspective we're exploring today suggests the latter. It invites us to see these revered figures and profound principles not as isolated rival icons, but as vital, luminous threads in a magnificent, divinely woven tapestry. Or, to use another metaphor, imagine a great symphony. Krishna, Buddha, Jesus embodying the Christ light, Maitreya, the Messiah, the Mahdi. They are not composers of competing symphonies. Rather, they are like master musicians, or perhaps different sections of a vast celestial orchestra, each playing a unique and essential part, a distinct melody that contributes to the richness and grandeur of the one great symphony of divine truth. The world teacher, in this analogy, could be seen as the conductor, ensuring each note is played with clarity and power, and the Christ principle as the divine music itself, the score of love and wisdom that resonates through all. This is where the profound, liberating insight begins to dawn. The age-old quest for a single true religion, the source of so much conflict and misunderstanding, may itself be a misdirection of our spiritual energies. True spiritual unity, it seems, is not found in achieving a bland uniformity of doctrine or ritual, but in the joyful recognition of the same divine essence, the same core ethical imperatives, the same call to love and wisdom, expressed in a multitude of culturally resonant forms. And here lies the point of release that can bring such profound relief to the sincere seeker. The real second coming, the true reappearance of the world teacher, isn't fundamentally about us picking the correct label from a list of divine candidates, or proving our tradition holds the exclusive key. Instead, it's about developing the spiritual sensitivity to recognize the energy, the consciousness, the unmistakable vibration of universal love and wisdom, regardless of the name that energy wears, regardless of the cultural form through which it chooses to manifest. This understanding frees us. It frees us from the need for spiritual exclusivity, from the burden of religious chauvinism. It allows us to celebrate the beauty and wisdom in all paths that genuinely lead to the summit of self-knowledge, to that sacred inner space of divine union, recognizing them as different trails ascending the same majestic mountain of truth. This understanding, this recognition of a unified spiritual heritage, is not meant to remain a mere intellectual concept. Its true power unfolds when we begin to live it, to embody it in our daily interactions, in the way we see the world and our fellow human beings. So, how can we practically tune our own instrument, as it were, to resonate more fully with this unifying Christ principle, and in doing so, help prepare the inner and outer conditions for the world teacher's presence to be more deeply felt? Let's consider a simple yet profoundly effective practice. We can call it the bridge of shared light. In your daily life, especially when you interact with someone from a different background, a different belief system, or even someone with whom you simply feel a sense of distance or disagreement, try this. For just 5 seconds, make a conscious internal pause. In that pause, silently, gently, visualize a delicate thread of golden light extending from your heart to theirs. You don't need to say anything. You don't need to force any particular feeling. Simply hold the intention, the quiet acknowledgement. The same light, the same divine spark that is within me, is also within you. This isn't about intellectual agreement on doctrines. It's about a heart-level connection, a recognition of shared being. Alongside this inner practice, we can cultivate a shift in our external focus. Instead of instinctively looking for the flaws or the points of contention in the beliefs or practices of others, a habit our critical minds are often too quick to adopt, we can consciously train ourselves to listen for the echoes of truth. We can actively seek out the expressions of compassion, the calls for justice, the reverence for life, the urgings towards integrity and selfless service. These are the hallmarks of the Christ principle, the signature of the world teacher, no matter where they are found. When we find these commonalities, we build bridges of understanding. The beautiful thing is, as you begin to practice this kind of inner recognition and outer seeking of common ground, something shifts within you. You not only contribute to building bridges in the external world, dissolving small pieces of the collective illusion of separation, but you also cultivate a deeper sense of inner peace within yourself. You become, in a very real sense, a more finely tuned instrument, a clearer channel for that unifying, loving energy of the Christ consciousness to flow into the world. You become part of the global welcoming committee, preparing a space in human hearts for the wisdom and love that the world teacher comes to amplify. We've journeyed together through diverse traditions and profound concepts, and what emerges is a beautifully coherent picture. One world teacher manifesting through many names, illuminating the path with the light of a single universal Christ principle. These are not just ancient tales or abstract philosophies. They are echoes of a living truth that resonates through the ages, calling humanity towards a deeper unity, a more conscious existence. As Martin Luther King Jr. so powerfully reminded us, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. In a world still so often fractured by misunderstanding and division, may we each choose to be that light, to embody that love, recognizing it as the core message of every true spiritual guide who has ever walked this earth. And so the invitation remains, a gentle yet persistent call to your own heart. What small note of unity, what quiet act of understanding or compassion can you add to the unfolding masterpiece of humanity's shared spiritual chorus today? If this journey into the heart of unifying wisdom has inspired you or sparked a new understanding, please show your support with a like on this video. Share it with other seekers who you feel might benefit from this message of hope and connection. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Mystic Sages, so we can continue to explore together the profound mysteries of consciousness and the timeless truths that guide our spiritual growth. We would be truly enriched to hear your perspective in the comments below. What spiritual value, what core teaching, do you believe is shared across all great traditions, a common thread that binds us all? Your insights and experiences are a vital part of our learning community. Thank you for joining us on this exploration.